Stickers are fun. Stickers are great, but in the 90s, there was one particular sticker that has been seared into my brain forever. Its origins and story aren't that deep, and neither was its message. But every time you were at a red light, walking with your family through a Walmart parking lot, or pulling into church on a Sunday morning, you couldn't escape it. The disheveled hair, the creepy smile, the eyes that say, "I'm full of attitude," and one perfectly arched stream of piss. You remember Calvin and Hobbes, right? The comic strip about a rambunctious yet lovable boy and his stuffed tiger. Sure, he was mischievous at times. I mean, he loved throwing slush balls at Susie Durkins and annoying his parents with millions of questions. But you know what most of us rational people in the 90s never thought of when we saw Calvin? I'll give you a hint. Peeing. You know, a 6-year-old. Peeing on something.
You know what's cool?
Big trucks.
You know what's even cooler?
Brand loyalty to the point of being absurd.
You know what's even cooler than that?
Showing your absurd brand loyalty on your truck with a sticker of a 6-year-old comic strip character peeing on a brand you don't like.
We get it, Todd. You like Ford trucks, but surely there are other ways of letting people know you have a creepy love affair with a corporation than by having a cartoon child piss on another's logo. Right? The origin of these Calvin decals is a bit hard to nail down, but if you had to guess where the first media mention came from, where would it be? Yeah, you're right, Florida. I mean, are you surprised? In November 1995, at a college football game, it was reported that a 25-foot motorhome was decked out with a sign of Calvin urinating on the letters FSU. As news spread quickly of this hilarious drawing, someone began creating stickers showing Calvin peeing on everything, from NASCAR drivers' numbers to just the word City Boys. And don't worry, for the ladies, there's also a female version of Calvin popping a squat on something. I don't get it. And there were even religious versions, because of course there were. Guys, you don't even have an original idea, huh? Most people seem to think that this image was lifted and modified from the fourth frame of the June 5th, 1988 comic strip where Calvin is filling a water balloon. And what's fascinating to me is the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, Bill Watterson, was resistant to licensing out his creations for merchandising. See, the thing is, when you have a licensed merchandiser, you also have a company on your side protecting the integrity and financial interests of your creation.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
In the Calvin and Hobbes 10th anniversary book, Watterson wrote, "I believe licensing usually cheapens the original creation. When cartoon characters appear on countless products, the public inevitably grows bored and irritated with them, and the appeal and value of the original work are diminished." No argument there. But without that legal firepower, money, and let's face it, time, going after the grown-ass adults responsible for turning Calvin into a Dale Earnhardt-hating piss baby just didn't make much sense. When asked about these stickers, Lee Salem, the vice president and editor at Universal Press Syndicate, said, "We've contemplated legal action, but the cost involved in finding those who make and sell the decals would far exceed what Universal could win in damages. The issue, at least to me, wasn't that bootlegs are necessarily bad. They're bad. But you don't have to look very hard and you'll find a ton of unlicensed and crude merchandise of a brand like The Simpsons. And yeah, it's strange seeing Bart between the ass cheeks of a large woman, but The Simpsons was a show that wasn't afraid of poking fun at mature themes, and it always felt like nothing was off limits. With Calvin and Hobbes, though, it was a comic strip that is genuinely heartfelt and almost innocent, as told through the eyes of a child. And while he did have some attitude, he was portrayed mostly as a harmless adventurer navigating his relationships with Hobbes, his parents, and his classmates. Certainly not the attitude portrayed in those stickers. That feels more like a Stewie Griffin thing. While in the 90s we didn't have a lot of Calvin and Hobbes merchandise, it was weird to see him in the wild, quite literally pissing away the image of that innocent child. It just never sat right with me. And not to shit on anyone's idea of humor, but it just isn't that funny.
Funny guy! Right here!
The 90s had a lot of like it or leave it humor, thanks to movies like Dumb and Dumber and Kingpin, and I can confidently say that Calvin piss stickers are most definitely a leave it byproduct of that decade. Just leave it way, 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 way over there. A little further, a little further. Get out of here. And that's going to do it for this episode on brands with attitude in the 90s. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with more 90s related content. If you're interested in another brand with attitude from the 90s, be sure to check out my video on the Noid, possibly the weirdest mascot of the 90s. If you dig what I'm doing and want to show your support, you can check out my Patreon page in the description down below. Your support gets you early access to my videos, voting on topics for upcoming episodes, and more future content. Until next time, dudes, I'm your host, Mike O'Connor. Later.